welcome to the Screen Podcast from the teams at Screen International and ScreenDaily.com. And this is our first Cannes Daily podcast episode of 2026, or indeed ever, our first daily podcast at a festival. So we are thrilled you're listening to this episode, whether you are with us here along the Cosette, or you are wanting to stay on top of all the buzz remotely as you struggle through your FOMO. I'm Wendy Mitchell, contributing editor at Screen, and for today's episode, I'm joined by Louise Tutt, deputy editor. Hi, Louise.
Bonjour, Wendy.
Thank you. You're getting me in the spirit. And Ben Dalton, senior reporter for UK and International. Hi, Ben.
Hi there, Wendy.
I am, as you'll see, I'm in my usual backdrop. I'm still packing. I'm going to be there in time for opening night tonight. So Louise and Ben are already on the ground. So they're going to be our voices from the scene of the crime. So what would you say? I mean, this festival, when we're talking to you, this festival hasn't really started. Everything is kicking off, Tuesday morning for the Marché, and then, of course, Tuesday night for the opening night film. But any sense of the mood yet, Louise, or the vibe, shall we say? I mean, people are still probably setting up offices as we go.
Well, you say it hasn't really started, Wendy, but actually yesterday there was a couple of really big buyer presentations that have already taken place at the Olympia Theatre. We had 193 that was trying to get buyers excited about Bitcoin, which stars Pete Davidson, Gal Gadot, and Casey Affleck. Isla Fisher's in that as well. And A24 were doing a big thing for the riders as well, which has pretty much sold out, but it's got some territories available, like UK Ireland, I think, and it's a real sign of trying to get buyers excited. And today, Film Nation are doing something big. Not quite sure what, but no, as in Berlin, the buyers are in early, the sellers are in early. It's already started.
Yes. I was even talking to somebody at a sales company who was saying, well, the market starts on Monday. And I said, well, not officially, my friends, but people are definitely coming in for that weekend. Oh, my gosh, as if Cannes wasn't long enough. Ben, are you hearing the same, that a lot of the buyers and sellers are just having to come in at the weekend or ready to start Monday morning with meetings or even earlier?
Absolutely. I think that because particularly the US buyers who are coming over, maybe they fly in at the weekend, that then has a knock-on effect that your sales companies have to be there to meet them. So I know that there were UK-based sales companies having screenings of their market titles yesterday morning. So, starting off bright and early on a Monday morning with a screening. And so it sort of is a cumulative thing that one goes after the other and they follow each other. It's meant it's been busy, before the festival's even started in these first couple of days. The port area has been lots of folks buzzing around. What it means for next weekend, we'll have to see as to how many folks are still here by the following week. But certainly for now, there's lots of people around.
And any cool, one thing that's fun about arriving in Cannes every year, obviously we've got the big Thelma and Louise image on the Palais this year, but have you seen any other cool, installations? There's usually something crazy put in front of the Carlton or the Majestic. Have we seen anything fun like that yet?
Still waiting on, maybe the big Top Gun helmet that we had a few years back and things like that. But what I have seen, which I think will please a lot of folk on the ground, is a lot of the building work around the port has now finished. So in past few years, that port area, which is obviously a lot of restaurants and bars where people take meetings, has been a bit of a challenge to negotiate. That's now actually a quite nice, well put together, calm space outside the town hall.
Looks beautiful.
There are two huge tricolor flags, just so we don't forget we're in France, draped from the town hall. That's now actually quite a nice, spacious area where I'm sure there'll be lots of folk sitting down for a rosé in the next 10 days.
Nice to hear, yeah.
We're saying it's busy, but actually the streets, I don't go out as much as Ben. I'm very much in our office at the Majestic, but the streets are actually, you can walk them. You can come out of the Majestic and walk at the moment. It's, it's beautiful weather today. It was beautiful weather yesterday. But there's still, it's quite fun. You're walking along and everybody's setting stuff up. All the beach clubs are setting up with all the various sponsors and everything.
I'm just waiting to get there, and then the rains will ensue, and all those tourists who bring, they're infants in buggies, so it means I can't walk anywhere. So watch the space.
Yeah, roll on the weekend.
Yeah, exactly. I know there've been a lot of packages announced in the past, probably 2 weeks before Cannes, which makes things very busy at the Screen office, even before we go to Cannes. You mentioned some of those big buyer presentations, Louise, from some of the US sellers, but any hot UK packages that we want to mention early?
I think there are a few, and I want to sort of highlight an interesting trend of hot packages with big names on them, films that are maybe even shooting this summer, but that are coming from slightly younger producers. So, we've had Garth Davis's The Midnight Library was announced yesterday, so Florence Pugh is going to star in this, but also produce this. That's obviously an exciting package with, based on a Matt Haig book. But then also things like a week or two ago, we had Aoife McConnell's Foxfinder. This is the director of Severance. And so this is with Tessa Thompson, Ibon Mosbakrak, and yes, this is a exciting young cast coming through, but also has young producers in Emilie Jouffroy, Camilla Hoddle from Elation Pictures, and then also Luna Carmoon's To Make Ends Meet. These are which produced by Helen Simmons and Lauren Dunn from the UK. So I think these sort of upcoming projects with big names attached to them, but also are coming from sort of a newer generation of producers.
Yeah, that's interesting, Ben. And it's interesting also, Camille and Emily have The End of It in Cannes this year, starring Rebecca Hall and Noomi Rapace and Gael Garcia Bernal. So yeah, they're looking quite busy. Louise, any of the UK packages exciting you in particular? There's so many of them.
Well, there are a lot, but what's interesting to me is that, as you can see from our front page in Screen today, the buyers are very much, they're coming into this market with a degree of trepidation. It's very much a winners takes all market. And I think what's interesting about that is it means that, some projects, some films, when they're at the right budget level, they've got cast, they hit with audiences, and those films are doing really, really well. But it's, as we've discussed many, many times, it's the middle that's gone. So it's very much you either do very well or you don't do well at all. And I think that it's interesting that, buyers are looking for the right budgets. They're looking to not spend too much, but it will be interesting how these projects sell, how much these projects sell, whether they think they can find audiences in their respective territories. And what's interesting is about how the winner takes all mentality for me also extends to Cannes itself. It's very much in terms of a festival. It's like you have to be in Cannes for your film to make any cut through with audiences, which probably isn't very healthy. And given how, French this festival has turned out to be, it's time, I think, to really, really hope that the festival season extends beyond Cannes.
Good point. And I remember you talked about that with Trisha Tuttle back at Berlin, because, we can't have a film industry with only one festival that really matters. So, we need some Toronto love. We need Venice love. We need Berlin love as well. Let's not forget that.
Well, I think there's lots of talk about, how French this festival has turned out to be. I mean, Thierry said it's not a French film festival. Well, of course, it is a French film festival and always has been a French film festival, but it's not the be-all and end-all, and it shouldn't be the be-all and end-all, and it's not good at all. And I think that what, we can hope that something like Berlin has next year is some of the bigger films, which will not only help conversation move on when it gets to some tricky moments, but will really help bring the buyers in. I mean, Ruben Östlund, I hope, should take the entertainment systems down to Berlin. Mr. Maverick should put his money where his mouth is.
Well, Louise, that would severely damage my friend Ruben Östlund's ego if he doesn't win 3 Palme d'Ors in a row. So I think that's one stumbling block with your plan.
Yeah, but surely if you're an artist, it shouldn't be about, do something really, truly artistic and brave and bold.
Good point. Speaking of brave and bold, Ben, yesterday afternoon, you went to Mr. Thierry Fremaux' press conference. Was he in a chatty mood? Was he talking about Gary Lineker again for not much reason?
So yes, this is Thierry Fremaux's annual pre-festival press conference, which isn't live streamed like all the other ones, but which he hosts just for the attending press, which was yesterday afternoon. Thierry spoke for well over an hour about the similar kind of runtime as I believe Pavel Pawlikowski's competition film Fatherland is. He was in very buoyant mood. He clearly loves this conference. He was looking ahead not just to this 79th edition of the festival, but also to the 80th edition of the festival next year. He took on topics like the political nature of these events and particularly of the press conferences recently. There was a lot of talk around this at Berlin. And actually, Thierry defended Wim Wenders and his comments about politics and film. Thierry felt yesterday that Wenders was misunderstood. He also spoke about the political history of Cannes. He managed to draw it round to Bruce Springsteen, who he loves, and Lyon football team, who he also loves. So this was, a 10-minute answer to a 30-second question, and Thierry certainly getting his money's worth at this press conference. He didn't actually address the question about the training of moderators and whether they're being trained on these political issues, but he wanted to make the point that politics is welcome at Cannes in the work of the filmmakers, and that they don't have to be political should they not wish to. He was also asked about female filmmakers, at which point he drew from his pocket pieces of paper, which he said he was ready for this question, so he prepared some statistics, and he then presented these as, for his case that the festival is, a place for gender equality. I'm not sure everyone is necessarily on the same page with him on that, because some of those statistics, I'm not sure they represent the full picture, and the festival is still down on previous years in terms of number of women directors in the competition. But he wanted to make the point that the festival is aware of this and is over a period of years trying to combat it. So no, he was very, very jolly, very full of energy, and clearly up for a busy 2 weeks.
Good for Thierry. Anything else sort of wacky, he said, Ben, or any surprises out of that press conference?
Well, he did. Was asked about the Oscar rule change, which now
The
brings
Palme
in
d'Or could
the
be
winner of
eligible.
the Palme d'Or, and so there's a sort of interesting context to this, that potentially a jury might see a film that they think, oh, wouldn't be great to have that film up for the Oscars, and that might sway their voting in how they choose their Palme d'Or winner. This was put to Thierry, who perhaps unsurprisingly refuted it. And he said that, he has no input at all in what the jury says. He meets them once at the start of the festival and then once again at the end of the festival. And that he doesn't feel that, for example, it would have made any difference with Jafar Panahi winning the Palme d'Or last year. He says that's purely about the film. But he did also speak about the increasing internationalization of the festival, which he dated very much. He said Parasite in 2019 was a big sort of point for that, and that ever since then, the festival has become more international, and he sees the Oscar rule change as a sort of a recognition of that. So it'll be interesting in 2 weeks' time, once we have our Palme d'Or winner, to see how that might play going into award season. But we've got a lot of films to watch before that point.
Yeah, I'm actually curious, and I haven't asked Charles Gant yet, of if a English language film were to win the Palme d'Or this year or any year, is that sort of wasted? That wouldn't go into the international feature race at the Oscars, would it? Because that still presumably has the foreign language element criteria.
Unless it was, no, it would need to have a foreign language. It would need to have a non-English language majority, wouldn't it? Well, I think the Oscar change is as much about, Jafar Panahi. It was just an accident won last year and then went on to take the French, spot, the French entry. And this is as much about saying, well, that Jafar Panahi's film could have been entered otherwise, and then the French could have entered a French language, French-produced film that set in France, I should think.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing opening up. I think there could still be maybe some more festivals added to that list, or some other rule changes in future, but I think it's a good start. But I can't be dealing with award season too much when I've got Cannes brain. So I wanted to ask both of you, what is something you are looking forward to in the next few days, or indeed across the festival. Louise, do you have, this could be a work moment. Are you looking forward to being able to have lunch one day at the end after you do all the dailies?
I always find time for lunch. Don't worry about that.
Good.
I mean, everything's a work moment. I would love to see some films. I'd love to see, in competition, I'd love to see Fatherland. I'd like to see, by Pavel Pavlovsky. I'd like to see Minotaur. And I'd catch up with friends that I only see once a year. And I do like being in Cannes. There's a smell of honeysuckle or jasmine. I can never really tell the difference, but there's lots to look forward to. It seems like it's a good year. I know critics are quite excited by some of the films, so yeah.
Sure. I want to see all those films on your list and more. Ben, what are you looking forward to?
Well, I've never been known to turn down a party. I think it'll be interesting this year to see what, as there aren't maybe the same big money films that have been in previous years, will that affect the kind of evening events? I know there are one or two things going on. I've heard of, Mubi putting together a party for Jane Schoenbrun's Teenage Sex and Death at Camp Miasma, so we'll see how that goes down. I'm looking forward to catching up with friends from other festivals, as well. It's we should never overlook the position of this festival as, a meeting point, and so there'll be teams from Carla Vivari coming in, friends coming in from the Middle East, from the Doha Film Institute, from Locarno, from all around. We have festival teams who we can sort of take this opportunity to meet with them, and then of course, really the highlight of it all, the Global Production Awards on Monday evening, which, it's still a few days away, but already I'm picking out my linen shirt and linen trousers for that one.
Watch out. I might have sequins for that. Yeah.
You two are
That's
really
worth it.
raising the game. I think I might have to go to a laundrette by Monday.
Yes. Don't worry, there is a Zara in town, Louise, as you well
Two.
know. Yeah, two. Yeah. Just to mention, Ben, you bring up the parties, and I've heard from some listeners who were quite disappointed in me being such an old stick in the mud at our How to Do Can podcast recording, when I'm like, I don't do parties, I'm too old for that. Get off my lawn. But I've been invited to that Teenage Sex and Death party, and I'm going to try to go because that sounds like a really hot ticket. And Ben, as you mentioned, there's a sort of gathering, an informal gathering, invite only, for festival programmers really from around the world. Like, it's usually 200 or 300 of all the festival heads gather. Instead of going to the opening night film, sorry, Thierry, we will see that another time. And we sort of raise a glass there. So that's quite fun. So a lot to look forward to. Thank you, Louise. Thank you, Ben, for taking a quick moment in your busy Cannes days to talk to us here for the first Screen Daily podcast at Cannes. And thank you, Ben and Louise, for joining us. I'm sure we'll be hearing more from you.
Je vous compris, I believe, something like that. You're very welcome, Wendy. It's a pleasure.
See you next time.
Great. Ben will get a full rundown of parties by the end from you. So thanks to everybody who has tuned in for this Daily One podcast at Cannes 2026. Do come back tomorrow morning for more. Thanks to the whole very busy team at Screen who makes this happen, especially our podcast editor and producer, Ellie Calnan, and web editor, Orlando Parfit. Don't forget to grab our print dailies in Cannes, as well as checking screendaily.com for breaking news. So everybody have a great opening day of Cannes 2026 and Cannes Marché, and we will chat to you again tomorrow.